BBC WM
95.6.
Howdy, welcome to the West Midlands biggest phone-in. My name is Adrian Goldberg. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. We're asking this morning, if you're a parent, how do we make the school's admission system fair? Is it currently biased against parents? In Birmingham, 1 in 3 children failed to get their first choice of secondary school. And we'll hear a story this morning about a local mum who has twice failed in an appeal over a primary school place for one of her children in the most heartbreaking of circumstances. So if you've had a problem getting your child into your school of your choice, what happened next? Have you gone through the appeals process? How do we make school admissions fair? You tell me. 08453 009956, or you can text me on 81333. Now, is the school's admission system biased against parents? In Birmingham alone, 1 in 3 children fail to get into their secondary school of choice. There is an appeals process, but what are your chances of success? Not great. Just to take one figure at random, in the Black Country, 9 out of 10 appeals re school places is unsuccessful. So how do we make the school's admission system fair? Should we have a lottery system like they do in some parts of the country? Do we need to allow schools which are hugely popular and which parents want to send their kids to, should we make them larger and simply allow the market to decide? How do we make the school system in terms of admissions and appeals fairer? And if you've had an issue trying to get a child into a school of your choice, wherever you live in the West Midlands, or indeed if you've gone through an appeal, I'd love to hear your story this morning. 08453 009956, or text me on 81333. Start your message with WM. I'm going to start off by talking to Zoe Atzori from Sutton Coldfield, and Zoe's got a story that I think will touch every parent listening to it, and she's coming to the studio. Welcome, Zoe. How are you?
Good morning.
Now, you got 2 children. You got Ella, who is 4, and Luca, who is 23 months. Just tell us about your school admissions story.
So, like everybody else, we applied for schools in December last year. At the same time, we were having tests done on Luca because we realised that there was something seriously wrong with him. In February, he was diagnosed with a very rare genetic disease called Tay-Sachs disease. There's only 3 other children in the country that have this disease like Luca. Through all of this, we kind of were waiting to see what school we were going to be allocated. Didn't have any worries about the fact that we wouldn't get into the school that we needed. In April, we were notified of the school place that Ella had got, and it wasn't the school that we actually needed, which is the nearest school to our house. After that, we got involved with the Bold Moon Mums campaign, who picked up the whole crisis, really, with the school places and what was going on. Attended some meetings to find out what to do next about this situation, and were told to appeal the decision to send Ella to the school that was our third choice. Went through the appeal process the first time. With our situation, we really felt that if we were going, if it was going to be successful, that our kind of case would be successful. It was dismissed on grounds that when the original application was made, the LEA hadn't been made aware of Luca's condition. The fact that we didn't know what was wrong with Luca when we applied for the school seems to be irrelevant. After that was dismissed, I sort of rang up the LEA and said, what can I do next, because I'm not going to accept this decision. I was told that you can't appeal an appeal decision, and after digging around a little bit, was then told that I could go to the local government ombudsman department and they could launch an investigation into the process of the appeal and whether there was any flaws made in it. That we went through, and in just towards the end of August, the ombudsman had found little tiny flaws with things like, when we'd gone to the appeal, there was no disabled access for our son. We were told things that we shouldn't have been told over the telephone, little tiny things. But what she felt that the LEA could accept a fresh application and a fresh appeal on was the fact that since we made the original application, our family circumstances had changed significantly, which was very true. So they accepted a fresh appeal based on those reasons. On the 21st of September, we had the second appeal hearing, which, this time we went with lots of evidence from the medical teams that are involved with our son, letters backing up that Ella needs to be at a school where the local community go, where our neighbours and our friends are in a support network that can maintain consistency to get her to attend school as often as possible.
So people can understand why this is so important to you, Zoe. Talk more about Luca's condition, because that's really what the school place requirement for you is so dependent on, isn't it? And as you say, Luca's got this condition that only 3 other children in the country have got. You've told us what it's called, but what does it mean?
So Luca developed normally for 6 months and then sort of wasn't sitting up, wasn't sort of developing any further. And basically he lost a lot of his skills, and there's no treatment for it at all. His whole body will just deteriorate. So he's virtually blind now. He's fed solely by a nasal tube because he can no longer swallow. His hearing is getting worse. He has seizures all day long, which is medicated, but still, he still has them. And basically, if he picks up a chest infection, then that can kill him. And our plea to the LEA is that putting Luca in the car to the school that Ella has been attending and was allocated to, we can't walk there because it's not near enough. Putting Luca in and out the car 8 times a day with his compromised immune system and he gets distressed just by picking him up and changing his nappy. He can't cope with it, and it will shorten his life.
Luca has a terminal condition.
Yes.
And what are his life chances? I mean, in terms of realistically, how old is he likely to live?
3, 4, if we're very lucky, if we keep him well. But there's not any children that have lived past 4.
And what school did you want him to go to?
Ella to Boldmere, which is our physically nearest school.
Yeah. And you were offered?
Wild Green, which is pretty much double the distance. It's still near, but it has to involve a car journey, which is just not doable with Luca's complex care needs. He needs, if we go out of the house, he needs his feed, he needs oxygen, and he needs a suction machine for if he starts to choke, we have to suction him because he can't manage his secretions.
So a car journey every day is not possible. No. Obviously, at least one of you has to go out to work every day.
Well, yeah, my husband and I juggle work. I work part-time as a special needs teacher, and he works day and night, but we juggle it so that we are Luca's carers because of his complex needs, obviously wanting to spend precious time with him.
So to give Luca the time that you need, to give him the care that he needs, and also to take Ella to school, the only practical school is your local school, is Boldmere.
Yeah, neighbours can, pick up Ella on the way past. She can go to school as normal, and if Luca's having a really bad day where we have lots of medical people coming and going, she's not got to be involved in that. She's 4. She's gonna be facing really tough experiences when Luca does eventually go, that, you know, no 4-year-old should have to deal with all of that. And we're worried about her emotional well-being.
Zoe Atzori in the studio with me here on BBC WM. I'm talking about school admissions this morning. You've heard the reasons why Zoe wants a school close to her home for her daughter Ella, given the condition of her son Luca. Is the school's admission system fair? How do we balance it to make it fair for every parent? Have you had a similar battle, the same as Zoe, to try and get your child into the school of their choice? What happened? Did you accept that maybe you couldn't go to the school of their choice, or did you actually fight an appeal? 08453 00 9956. BBC WM, 17 minutes past 9. BBC WM 19 this morning. We'll hear the story this morning of Zoe Atzori. Zoe's got a little girl called Ella who is 4. She wanted her to go to her nearest local school. Obviously, most parents do, but in this particular case, there was a special reason, in that Zoe's little lad, Luca, has a terminal illness and cannot be put into a car day in, day out, a couple of times a day without compromising his health, and they have to juggle family matters. They both work. So I just want to talk about school admissions this morning. If you've ever had an issue trying to get your child into the school of their choice, and if you've gone through the appeals process, is it biased against parents? And how do we ensure a fair admission system? 08453 00 9956. So at the moment, Zoe, what is this meaning for your family, for you, your husband, for your little girl Ella, and for Luca? How are you juggling it all?
Well, not only is the whole thing adding extra stress to our lives, we are managing just about to juggle getting Ella to school. However, she has already missed the first 3 days of school because Luca had a really bad chest infection, so he couldn't go out of the house, and I wasn't prepared to compromise his health anymore. And just last week, we hadn't got anyone to pick her up because we don't know anybody that lives anywhere near us. No one could pick her up from school, so she had to come along to the Children's Hospital to Luca's consultant appointment and sit in a room where we're talking about, you know, end-of-life care plans and things like that. It's just not right for a 4-year-old to have to do that.
And as a parent, you've got this grim knowledge that one of your children is going to die.
It's not going to get any easier. It's going to get a lot harder.
Got a statement from Birmingham City Council about this. I should stress, by the way, we knew we were going to do this today, and I put a bid in, a request for an interview on Wednesday afternoon, just after we came off air, so maybe about 2 o'clock on Wednesday. No cabinet member. Bridget Jones is the cabinet member responsible for this in Birmingham City Council, and no council officer was available to come and talk to us and just explain the admission system and explain the appeals process. I've got a statement, this is from Bridget Jones, who is the Cabinet Member for Children and Family Services, saying this is an exceptionally sad case. My heart goes out to the family. However, I am satisfied that officers at Birmingham City Council have correctly applied the council school admissions policy, which has been applied to some 30,000 children this year. This policy complies fully with the requirements of national school admissions and regulations. Unfortunately, on this occasion, the application of the council's policy meant that it was not possible to offer a place at the parents' preferred school. The parents' subsequent appeal was rejected by an appeal panel, which is independent of Birmingham City Council. However, as a result of a change in family circumstances, Birmingham City Council offered the parents a fresh appeal to the independent appeal panel. Whilst this appeal too was rejected by the appeal panel, it has come to my attention that there were flaws in the second appeals process. I have therefore instructed that a further appeal be offered.
If my husband hadn't have gone and flyered outside the council house last week and the paper hadn't have come to interview him, we would never have found that information out because, Bridget Jones issued that statement and then later on that day issued the last bit saying that she'd obviously looked at the paperwork from the appeal and found flaws in it. To this day, I still don't know what flaws she found because they won't give us that information.
Well, they won't give it to us either because they won't speak in public about it.
We now have an appeal this next Thursday coming up, but I need to know what the flaws were to put that in our next appeal hearing.
How do you feel you're being treated?
Very unfairly. And they say these people are independent, but they go through training with the LEA in how to be a panel person. The LEA train them. What they don't, I don't know whether they train them in the actual powers that they do have. They do have the powers to overturn decisions.
It just strikes me that at a very human level, Zoe, you know, hearing your story, the finality of little Luca's existence, the need for Ella to get a proper education and go forward. Any system that was run compassionately with an ounce of the recognition of the human factor in this would today pick up the phone to you as a mum and would say, you know what, Zoe, we're going to put your child into the nearest school. That's what a human being, having heard your story, it seems to me, with an ounce of compassion, would do.
I ask those people at the LEA to put themselves in my shoes, in our shoes. Imagine it as one of their children. They would be sat here, you know, trying to get justice, trying to get listened to, because every time we've been to an appeal, it feels like we're on trial to try and justify why Luca's life should be a little bit longer. That's what it feels like, and to try and, you know, maintain stability for Ella through this really difficult time that's only going to get a lot harder. It's not right.
Really appreciate you coming in, Zoe. Thank you so much, and good luck. It is going to be a tough road ahead.
It really is, and yet again, got to sit and justify it all to another panel next week, which is tiring.
I can imagine. But I really appreciate you coming in and sharing your story with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
It seems to me absolutely shocking. Whatever the theories, whatever the rules and regulations, you hear one mum's story. She's got a child with a terminal condition in a very fragile state of health. You've got another child who's starting school, and for the complications that we've highlighted, the child who started school needs to be close to home. And all we can get from Birmingham City Council is a statement about the rules and regulations. Flaws in the process have been identified, flaws which have not been in any way explained to the family, which are not being explained to us. If anything tells you that the current appeal system in our education system is rotten to the core, then surely this story is it. You might want to comment on what you've heard from Zoe. You might want to tell me about your experience of trying to get a child into your school of choice. It may not be quite as dramatic as Zoe's story, but how do we make school admissions fair? And is the appeal system biased against mums and dads? 08453 00 9956. You can text me on 81333. Start your message with WM, or you can email adrian.goldberg at bbc.co.uk. We're approaching 9:30. On BBC WM, slightly different pace in the first half hour of this show. I thought it was really important to get Zoe's story out there and to hear it in full. Zoe Atzori, who is from Sutton Coldfield, she's got a terminally ill child. The child can't be put readily into a car. They have to pack all sorts of equipment. It hurts the child, hurts little Luca, hurts his immune system. He can't be transferred to and from school while his sister is taken to the school away from the home. It needs to be the local school. If that's not an exceptional circumstance, what is? I just wonder if you've had a problem getting your child into your school of choice and how we make the school admission system fairer. 08453 00 9956. Is the whole appeal system biased as well? Let's speak to Matt in Boldmere. Hello, Matt.
Hi, good morning.
Hello, mate. Yeah, have you got a story like this?
Yeah, I have. I just want to quickly say first, you know, I'm a local parent from Sutton Coldfield, and we've, you know, all the parents in this area have heard about the Atzori family and to them, it's a really, really terrible situation. It's every parent at the school gate would just agree that they just need to be given a place at Bournemouth School. So come on, the LEA, sort it out. But my point on admissions and appeals sort of relates to the Atzoris, or I'd like to draw some comparisons to the Atzoris.
Yeah.
My wife and I went through the appeals process this year when our daughter failed to secure a place at her local Catholic school, and we thought hard about whether we should appeal, and we did because of our massive disappointment at our daughter missing out on a Catholic education, really connected to her local church that she's grown up with.
So you are Catholic. You were Catholics who wanted to go to your local Catholic school.
That's correct.
And you still couldn't get in.
Yeah, we couldn't get in. It was our first choice. But, to be fair, we did get our second choice. But and it's a good school, no complaints there. It's a great school, very happy.
Yeah.
But the Catholic side of things was a big disappointment to us. So we thought hard about appealing, and we did in the end. But, of course, we were unsuccessful. And I think the reasons we were unsuccessful were basically the appeals process looks at certain criteria, and the first criteria seems to be the most important one, which is has the school admissions process been followed?
Yes.
Have the regulations been followed?
Yes.
Then they sort of look at is the reception year class in that particular school full? And that seemed, and there are clauses in the admissions process relating to, if there's a moral need for this child to be, or an exceptional need for this child to be included in the school. But it's those first two criteria that I mentioned that seem to be the only ones that are considered. And in our case, the admissions process had been followed by the LEA. There was no discrepancies there, and
yes.
I wouldn't argue with that.
Yeah.
And the reception year class was full. And they seem to say, well, there's no way, there's no scope at all of increasing the reception year.
Well, Matt, two things about that, because I went through an appeal with one of my children, the youngest of the two, because there was a danger that she would have been sent to a different school than her sister, even though they were both of primary school age, which gives you all sorts of complications in a family, especially when one of us, me, isn't there in the morning. And most families will be in that situation. And I was told, as you were, Matt, that as long as the appeals process has been followed consistently, the admissions process has been followed consistently, and it's been applied equally to every child, then it doesn't matter what your grounds of appeal are, even if the admissions system is itself unfair. As long as an unfair system has been applied equally to every child, that's all that counts, which seems mind-boggling to me. The other is that, as you say, this thing about 30 children to a class, if the school is full, that's it. That actually isn't it. Schools do have flexibility to hire more teachers if there's a class over 30. So when they tell you they can't go over 30 and it's a legal requirement, they are lying, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when our appeal was unsuccessful, we sort of did a bit of research into why that was the case, and there were plenty of schools outside of the Birmingham area that do go one or two, maybe even three places over the 30 class limit. It just seems in Birmingham to be very stringently applied. So that's a bit confusing. And then we sort of looked into the statistics of how many appeals have been upheld this year and last year, and the answer is none. There are no appeals.
Well, I'd heard this, and I did try to clarify this with Birmingham City Council, and as yet have had no comeback on it. But I was told this anecdotally, that I think for primary school appeals anyway, there was a 0% chance of success.
Absolutely. So it begs the question, why even have an appeals process if you have no space within the system, within Birmingham, to make any changes? Because that's why they're not upholding, in my opinion, that's why they're not upholding these appeals, because they just have no room for movement. The schools are just so full. And basically what they do is they say, has the process been followed? Yes. Is the class full? Yes. Well, computer says no. And that's what they're applying to Zoe Atzori and the Atzori family's situation here. They're applying exactly that mentality. And quite clearly in the admissions policy, there are clauses, there are paragraphs in there that cover such circumstances as the Atzoris, and I feel that the LEA is putting real pressure to bear to not uphold any appeals across the whole of Birmingham.
Very interesting, Martin Boldmere, thank you. I mean, come on, doesn't common sense say that in the case of Zoe Atzori and her children, Ella, who is of school age, Luca, who isn't, but who is terminally ill, would you not agree with me that common sense says that Ella should be given a place in the school nearest her home? Damn the rules and regulations, or is that being unfair? Should the council simply apply them fairly and evenly to every parent, whatever the circumstances? You tell me. 08453 009956. Is there any way we can make school admissions fair and satisfy every parent? Text me if you like on 81333. Start your message with WM. Let's speak to Matt Richards, who runs schoolappeals.com, a website that helps people who want to appeal against their verdicts. Hello, Matt. How are you, mate?
Hi, good morning, Adrian. Yeah, I'm well.
I mean, this astonishing story that we're featuring today about Zoe Atzori. I don't know if you heard all the details, Matt.
Yes, I was listening, yeah.
I mean, she's got a terminally ill child who is too young to go to school, but he will almost certainly die by the age of 4, but he was in a very fragile condition, saying she needs the school within walking distance of her home because any other school puts immense pressure on the child who is terminally ill, not to mention upon mum and dad, and not to mention adding extra emotional pressure on the child who is going to school. I mean, it seems to me to beg a belief that any kind of system run by human beings would not simply say to Zoe and her family, right, obviously you've got to go to your local school.
I think you're absolutely right. And can I say, firstly, that if Zoe wants to contact me off air, I'm more than happy to speak to her.
That's very kind. Thank you,
because that's the sort of case where, some advice might help. I think if I had Zoe's circumstances, and I am probably representing, that's advocating with parents, around about 80, 90 parents a year. I think if I had Zoe's circumstances, in the vast majority of areas, I would win that case 9 times out of 10. I would say that 9 appeal panels out of 10 would allow that. I know you said the system is rotten. I'm not sure the system is rotten. I think there's something going on at Birmingham which is very, very wrong. Okay? Now, it's already, the gentleman who spoke before has already alluded to that, but there is discretion. There is very clear discretion. I looked at the statistics yesterday. I checked them this morning. The type of appeal that Zoe is going through, and I think other parents have gone through it, it's called a 30 class size appeal. It's what you normally go through when you're trying to get your child into reception, and the class group is 30. Nationally, 14% of people win that appeal. Now, that's not high, and if you're going for a secondary appeal, that goes up to 30-something%. But it does mean that the 1 in 10, the very exceptional case, normally goes through. So I'm not sure what's happening at Birmingham. We've almost said to people who come to us from Birmingham, before you spend any money, think very carefully about this because the odds are stacked against you. My feeling is, I have no proof of this whatsoever, it's completely anecdotal, the training may not be truly independent. Another lady earlier on said I think Zoe said, the training is undertaken by the local authority. That is effectively like Arsene Wenger training the Tottenham team before the game. He's not particularly going to do a great job, is he? Let's be honest.
Well, he may not be seen as strictly impartial, I think it's fair to say, isn't it?
Absolutely. But if you do it properly, you hire people who are independent to do the training, and therefore you do it at arm's length. I don't know what's happening at Birmingham, but for a 0% with the number of appeals that Birmingham would have, means that somebody is putting pressure on those panel members, I suspect, to say, you can't do this. Now, that's very, very wrong.
It's not unique to Birmingham, though. I mentioned that across the Black Country, 9 out of 10 appeals is unsuccessful. So that is a higher rate of success, but still means that, 9 out of 10 parents who in some way feel aggrieved about the admissions process in the Black Country, 9 out of 10 patients, 9 out of 10 parents feel let down because their appeal fails.
Absolutely. Well, but let's be clear, Adrian. There are parents that will fail because of they don't follow the process, and not necessarily their fault. I mean, the gentleman said, and you said earlier, without getting too legalistic, have the admission rules been followed effectively? And for most people, yes, that is the case. Yeah. The second thing the panels then look at is, has the admission authority acted reasonably in the way they've dealt with an application? Now, for example, Zoe said, well, as soon as those circumstances became known, we made them known to the authority. The authority then still took a decision not to allow her appeal. Now, unfortunately, the vast majority of of parents, when they fill in their online application form or their hard copy application form, do not tell the whole story. If there is medical, and what I would say to any parent listening today, you will be doing your forms over the next month or whatever, make sure if you have medical reasons, if you have social reasons, if you have childcare reasons, if you have work reasons, whether a particular school is needed by you, you put it on the form. Because there is a legal technicality which admission authorities do, and I worked for one for many, many years, do rely upon to say, hang on a minute, we have acted reasonably because you didn't tell us anything about your particular case. Now, there's no guidance out there for parents. There's nothing on the websites that says, look, tell us everything. But it is a loophole for them to say, we didn't know about your work arrangements, we didn't know about your childcare arrangements, therefore we've acted reasonably. And I'm afraid the way the legislation is currently drafted, and it is, I think it needs reviewing in terms of infant class size appeals, the appeal panel don't have a lot of choice at that point unless it is very, very significant new personal information, but to dismiss the appeal, Adrian. And that means that the process is a bit of a farce to a certain extent.
Matt, good to speak to you. Thank you for joining us. Matt Richards, who runs schoolappeals.com. If you have had a school appeal, was it fair? Is there something particular going on in Birmingham that 0% of primary school appeals were unsuccessful? 08453 009956. How do we make school admissions fair? Very interesting email from Sid in Yardley Wood. He says, if we're having problems placing children now, what are the future prospects with single faith schools and, of course, academies that fall outside the normal rules of the local education authority? This is surely a recipe for disaster, in particular with children of minority religions in areas catering for other groups. I had issues over halal meat being given to Christian children without consulting the parents, even though the school standards say pupils should be told if meat is halal. So what's it going to be like for a Christian child in a predominantly Muslim school? Sid in Yardley Wood, thank you. 08453 009956. How do we make school admissions fairer?
Friday, 9 till 12.
BBC WM
95.6.
Adrian Goldberg here on BBC WM with the West Midlands' biggest phone-in, talking today about the school's admission system and asking, is it biased against parents? New figures show that in Birmingham, 1 in 3 children didn't get their first choice of secondary school. In the Black Country, 9 out of 10 school admission appeals fails. I've been speaking to a mum who has twice failed in her appeal over a primary school place after her youngest child was diagnosed with a rare genetic condition. Zoe Atzori told me the only way to give her ill son Luca the time he needs without disrupting her 4-year-old Ella's routine is to send her to the local school in Boldmere.
Neighbours can, pick up Ella on the way past. She can go to school as normal, and if Luca's having a really bad day where we have lots of medical people coming and going, she's not got to be involved in that. She's 4. She's gonna be facing really tough experiences when Luca does eventually go. No 4-year-old should have to deal with all of that.
So shouldn't a school admission system have a heart and a head as well as simply rules and regulations? Having heard her story, would you not say that Zoe's little girl Ella should be allowed to go to the nearest school to her, whatever the rules and regulations say, so that little Luca, who is terminally ill, doesn't have to be inconvenienced, and so that as a family they can spend his last few months together in the best possible way? Generally, the school's admissions system, have you had maybe the unfortunate experience of not getting your child into the school that you wanted them to? Do you just have to bite your lip and accept it? Or could we design a fairer system? And how does the appeal system work? Is it biased against mums and dads? 08453 009956. Here's what you've been telling me so far.
My wife and I went through the appeals process this year when our daughter failed to secure a place at her local Catholic school, and we thought hard about whether we should appeal. And we did because of our massive disappointment at our daughter missing out on a Catholic education, really.
We had a problem with our daughter this September where our third choice of school was refused. So we ended up being sent miles away from the school of our choice. So we appealed it. We went to the appeals panel and basically we won.
So is the school's admission system biased against parents, or if you've got a fair case, do you win? 08453 009956 or email adrian.goldberg@bbc.co.uk. 009956. Questions have been asked as well about the quality of the schools panel, whether in Birmingham in particular it can be seen as independent, given that it's trained by the local education authority. We have had a call from a member of the appeals panel for schools in Birmingham. Didn't want to come on air. This person says training is done by an independent solicitor hired by Birmingham Council. Recently spent all day training for the regulations, and they do this regularly. They are bound to by law. If parents don't think the law is fair, then you go to the MP to get your law changed. Medical reasons, you need to give evidence and a letter to the LEA when you're making the preference for school, saying the school wanted is the only one they can go to, preferably from a paediatrician. So then you can bring all this info to an appeal. Preference is not a choice. Schools. Thank you for calling us. Let's get the news now with Kevin Pashby.
Good morning. A Birmingham mum's appealing for her daughter to go to their local primary school so they can spend more time looking after their terminally ill son. Zoe Atzori has been turned down a place at her nearest school as they're just outside of the catchment area. A place has been offered at another school, but the family say it's too far away and means they can't care properly for their son. Birmingham City Council say they'll now be looking at the case again after finding flaws in the appeals process. Police searching for 5-year-old April Jones in Wales say they've received more than 2,500 calls from members of the public. Detectives have been given until this evening to question 46-year-old Mark Bridger about April's disappearance. A campaign targeting sex offenders is being launched as it's revealed at least 40 rapes or serious sexual assaults are being reported across the West Midlands every week. Police are targeting sex offenders across the region who think they've done nothing wrong in a hard-hitting campaign. And Aston Villa manager Paul Lambert's reportedly suing his former club Norwich City for wrongful dismissal and breach of contract. Taking a look at the weather, cloudy with showers, highs of 14 Celsius, 57 Fahrenheit. BBC WM 95.6 News. There's more online at bbc.co.uk/Birmingham.